There's something uniquely terrifying about a phone ringing in the dead of night. That sudden piercing sound cutting through the silence, dragging you from sleep into a state of confused panic. Your heart races as you fumble for the device in the darkness, wondering who could possibly be calling at this ungodly hour. Is it an emergency, a wrong number, or something far more sinister? Tonight, I'm sharing 3 true stories from people who answered late-night calls they wish they never had. Stories that will make you think twice before picking up that phone after midnight. Sarah was a college student living alone in a small apartment just off campus. It was her first time living by herself, and though she loved the independence, the nights sometimes felt oppressively quiet. It was 2:15 in the morning when her phone rang for the first time. She jolted awake, her heart hammering in her chest as she reached for her cell phone on the nightstand. The screen showed an unknown number with a local area code. Half asleep and thinking it might be one of her friends calling from a different phone, she answered. "Hello?" Silence. Complete and utter silence stretched across the line. Sarah waited a few seconds, then repeated herself, louder this time. "Hello? Who is this?" Still nothing. She could hear something though, a faint static, the subtle indication that someone was on the other end. The line was active, but whoever had called wasn't speaking. After another moment of uncomfortable silence, Sarah hung up. She chalked it up to a wrong number, or maybe a butt dial, and tried to go back to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come easily. Something about that call unsettled her in a way she couldn't quite explain. 20 minutes later, her phone rang again. Same number. This time when she answered, she heard breathing. Not heavy, not threatening, just steady, rhythmic breathing. Someone was definitely there, listening to her. "Who is this?" Sarah demanded, trying to sound braver than she felt. "Stop calling me!" The breathing continued, unchanged. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the line went dead. Sarah sat up in bed, now fully awake and deeply unnerved. She blocked the number and tried to convince herself it was just a prank, some bored teenagers messing around. It had to be. But as she lay in the darkness, every shadow in her room seemed to take on a sinister quality. Every small sound made her jump. The third call came at 3:47. This time the call came from a different number, but Sarah immediately recognized the same breathing pattern when she answered. Her blood ran cold. How did they get a different number? Why were they doing this? Before she could speak, a voice whispered through the phone, so quiet she almost missed it. "I can see you." Sarah's entire body went rigid. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I can see you, Sarah. You should close your curtains." The line went dead. Sarah's apartment was on the 3rd floor. There was no way someone could see into her bedroom window unless they were in the building across the street. With trembling hands, she slowly turned her head toward her window. The curtains were open, just slightly, and the darkness outside seemed to press against the glass like something alive. Sarah couldn't move. She sat frozen in her bed, staring at that window, unable to look away, unable to breathe. Then she saw it, a tiny red light in the darkness across the street, the glow of a phone screen. Someone was standing in the window of the abandoned building directly across from hers, watching her. The light moved, swaying slightly as if the person was shifting their weight. Sarah finally found her voice and screamed. She ran to the window and ripped the curtains closed, then grabbed her phone and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. The police arrived within minutes and searched the abandoned building, but they found no one. They did, however, find evidence that someone had been there. Cigarette butts, an empty coffee cup, and, disturbingly, several photographs printed on plain paper. Photographs of Sarah's window taken at different times over the past week. The police told Sarah she likely had a stalker and advised her to stay with friends or family. She moved out of that apartment the very next day and never returned. She still doesn't know who was calling her that night or how long they had been watching her before they decided to make contact.
Marcus worked as a night shift security guard at a corporate office building downtown. The job was usually quiet and uneventful, which suited him just fine. He'd make his rounds, check the doors, and spend most of his shift watching security monitors and browsing his phone. It was easy money. The building had been there for decades, and Marcus had worked there for almost 3 years without incident. One Thursday night, around 1 in the morning, the phone at the main security desk rang. This was unusual because the only calls that came through that line were from the building management or emergency services. Marcus picked up the receiver. "Security, Marcus speaking." A male voice responded, distorted and strange, like it was coming through a bad connection or being artificially altered. "There's someone in the building, 3rd floor, northwest corner." The line went dead before Marcus could ask any questions. Marcus immediately pulled up the camera feeds for the 3rd floor. He scanned through each one carefully, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Empty hallways, dark offices, everything as it should be. He made a note in his log and decided to do a physical check on his next round. But as he sat there, staring at the monitors, an uncomfortable feeling crept over him. Something about that voice had sounded familiar, though he couldn't place it. 30 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same voice. "You didn't check. They're still there. 3rd floor." This time Marcus was ready. "Who is this? How do you know someone's in the building?" But the caller had already hung up. Marcus grabbed his flashlight and radio and headed to the 3rd floor immediately. As he climbed the stairs, he couldn't shake the feeling that he knew that voice from somewhere. The 3rd floor was empty as the cameras had shown. Marcus checked every office, every conference room, every supply closet. Nothing. He radioed in to the monitoring company that handled after-hours calls for the building. "Hey, did you guys call the security desk tonight?" The dispatcher on the other end sounded confused. "Negative. We haven't called you all night. Is everything okay?" Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "Yeah, all good. Just checking." He headed back down to the lobby, his unease growing with each step. Back at his desk, Marcus decided to review the call logs on the phone system. What he found made his blood run cold. The calls had come from an internal extension 3047. He looked up the extension in the building directory. It belonged to the office of David Chen, a senior accountant. Marcus knew David Chen. Everyone in the building knew him. David Chen had died 6 months ago of a heart attack at his desk on the 3rd floor. Marcus's hands were shaking as he stared at the extension number. It had to be a glitch, some kind of technical error. There was no other explanation. But then the phone rang again, and Marcus stared at the caller ID display with growing horror. Extension 3047. He didn't want to answer it. Every instinct screamed at him to ignore it, to walk away, to call his supervisor, and quit on the spot. But his hand moved almost on its own, lifting the receiver to his ear. The voice was clearer now, and Marcus finally understood why it sounded familiar. It was David Chen's voice. He had spoken to David dozens of times before his death, casual conversations in the elevator or the lobby. "Marcus," the voice said, and it sounded sad, tired, and impossibly distant. "I tried to warn you. They're here now. Look at camera 9. The line went dead. Marcus pulled up camera 9 with trembling fingers. It showed the 3rd floor hallway outside David Chen's old office. The hallway was empty, but as Marcus watched, the door to David's office slowly began to open. Marcus didn't wait to see what came through that door. He grabbed his things and ran out of the building, leaving his security post abandoned for the first time in his career.
He called his supervisor from his car and quit over the phone, refusing to explain why. The building management reviewed the security footage and found exactly what Marcus had seen, the door opening on its own. But they also found something else on the recordings from the third floor. A figure, translucent and barely visible, moving through the hallway. A figure that appeared to be wearing business casual clothing. A figure that looked exactly like David Chen.
Emily was driving home late from a friend's house, taking a familiar route through the countryside she'd traveled hundreds of times before. It was a clear night, the moon bright enough that she could see the rolling fields and scattered trees alongside the two-lane highway. Her phone, sitting in the cup holder, began to ring at 11:30. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number. She normally didn't answer calls from numbers she didn't recognize, especially while driving, but something made her press the answer button on her steering wheel. "Hello?" A woman's voice, frantic and breathless, burst through her car speakers. "Don't take the bridge! Whatever you do, don't take the bridge!" Emily's heart skipped a beat. "What? Who is this?" The woman was crying now, her words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "Please, you have to listen to me. Take the old highway instead. Don't take the bridge. He's waiting there. He's waiting for you." Before Emily could respond, the line went dead. She stared at the dark road ahead, her mind racing. There was only one bridge on her route home, the Patterson Bridge that crossed the river about 5 miles ahead. The old highway the woman had mentioned was an alternate route that added 20 minutes to the drive, winding through the hills instead of going straight across the river. Emily had never taken it. There was no reason to. The bridge was faster, safer, and well-maintained. But something about the terror in that woman's voice made Emily reconsider. The way she had said, "He's waiting for you," the absolute conviction in her tone. Emily's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as she approached the turnoff for the old highway. At the last possible second, she jerked the wheel and took the turn. She felt foolish letting a random phone call dictate her route, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As she drove along the old highway, her phone rang again, same number. This time when she answered, the woman sounded relieved, almost jubilant. Thank God you listened. You have no idea what you just avoided." Emily's confusion was turning to fear. "Who are you? How do you know where I am? What's going on?" The woman took a shaky breath. "I can't explain everything, but you need to know. A man has been watching you, following you. He knew your route. He was waiting on that bridge tonight. If you had crossed it, you wouldn't have made it home." Emily felt like she might be sick. "I'm calling the police right now." The woman's voice became urgent again. "Do it. Call them. Tell them to check the Patterson Bridge. Tell them to look for a dark blue sedan parked on the far side. Tell them about Marcus Holloway." Before Emily could ask anything else, the call ended. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone to dial 911. She reported everything the woman had said, giving the dispatcher all the details about the bridge and the car and the name. The dispatcher took her seriously, perhaps because of the genuine terror in Emily's voice, and sent officers to check the bridge immediately. Emily was told to keep driving and to come to the police station to give a statement. As she drove, her mind wouldn't stop racing. Who was that woman? How did she know about the bridge? How did she know Emily would be driving that route tonight? At the police station, Emily gave her statement to 2 detectives who listened with increasingly serious expressions. They told her to wait, and about an hour later, they returned with news that made Emily's blood run cold. Officers had found a dark blue sedan parked on the far side of Patterson Bridge, exactly where the woman had said it would be. Inside was a man with a knife, zip ties, and a length of rope, a man named Marcus Holloway, who had a warrant out for his arrest in connection with 3 previous abductions. But here's where the story takes a turn that Emily still can't explain. The detectives asked her about the woman who called, asking if she could provide any more details about her. Emily described the voice, the things she said, and the detectives exchanged a look that Emily couldn't read. One of them pulled out a photograph and slid it across the table. "Is this the woman who called you?" Emily stared at the photograph. It showed a young woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. "I don't know. I never saw her.
She just called, but why are you showing me this? The detective's voice was gentle but firm. This is Rachel Morrison. She was Marcus Holloway's first victim 4 years ago. She died trying to escape him on the Patterson Bridge. Her car went over the side into the river. Emily felt like she might be sick. That's impossible. She called me tonight. She saved my life. The detectives didn't argue with her. They simply told her they had pulled the call records from her phone. Every call she received that night had come from the same number, a number that had been disconnected 4 years ago, a number that had belonged to Rachel Morrison. Emily never got another call from that number, but sometimes, late at night, she thinks about the woman's voice, about the desperation and relief she heard. She thinks about how Rachel Morrison, even in death, had somehow reached across the void to save a stranger's life, to stop one more person from suffering the same fate she had. Emily took a different route home from that night forward, and she never crosses the Patterson Bridge. She can't, because she knows that somewhere, somehow, Rachel is still watching over that bridge, still trying to warn people, still fighting to prevent others from becoming victims of the monster who took her life.
These 3 stories remind us that late-night phone calls can be more than just inconvenient interruptions of our sleep. Sometimes they're warnings, sometimes they're threats, and sometimes they're messages from places we can't begin to understand. The next time your phone rings in the dead of night, you might want to think twice before answering, because you never know who or what might be on the other end of the line. Sweet dreams, and keep your phones on silent.